Before we begin blocking out our level, we need to spend some time to actually plan out exactly what we're going to build. And we're going to do this during a 2D phase of development. What this means is we'll be creating a level design document, or LDD. And in this document, we'll be pitching a sequence of gameplay experiences. We'll be choosing a setting for our level design. This is based on not only how the level designer envisions the level, but also on the overall narrative dependencies and story arc of the entire game. In the document, we will be determining scope, including interiors, exteriors, custom assets needed specially for this level, and also perhaps the duration of play in the level itself. We will be assembling some reference images to ground our level setting in reality, and we'll be creating a 2D design of the playable space to easily communicate our intentions to the rest of the team. So for reference, typically I go to Pinterest, I assemble a Pinterest board. You'll have to find your own references for your level, whatever suits them. For this one here, I chose a lot of different images of an old abandoned mills or working mills that were maybe 100 years old, and the kind of towns that would have been built around them, oftentimes housing really nothing much more than the workers and perhaps small businesses related to the workers who live there. So as we're creating the level design document, we need to consider our setting, an abandoned mill town in a post-apocalyptic setting. This kind of assumes, for instance, that our game is set in a post-apocalypse. So within this setting, we need to establish landmarks and player guides that make it easy for the player to recognize the environmental storytelling, find their way around the level, things like that. Also, we have to establish our narrative here. In this one, perhaps this is a quest in an RPG type game, something like that. So in this particular instance, we're going with the narrative of the player acting as a hired gun, a mercenary, who's hired to exact revenge on a bandit leader for maybe an NPC somewhere in the story. The level will be seen as a story chapter within an overarching game story arc. And the narrative here needs to be respected so we can convey the narrative moments through scripted events or cinematics and indicate them where appropriate. We'll be looking at conveying gameplay beats in this design document as well, defining those. The beats are essentially areas and moments of play with differentiating player activities. Sometimes in development in a lot of studios, the kind of terms used to describe these differentiating player activities are discussed as RLD, or rational level design. They include a very standardized way of referring to things, like, for instance, reach, find, defeat. Reach might indicate the player being told to go to a specific location that's known in advance of what that location is. Find might be finding a way to get to a certain area. And if the player doesn't already know how to get there, find might be the word used there, but it'll be used throughout the game, and everyone will understand what is expected of the player by using those terms. Defeat, also same, that might be the term for winning a combat scenario, for instance. And finally, in the level design document, it's very important to have a really strong 2D layout design presentation. So when players look at the graphics accompanying your descriptions, they understand exactly what to expect when they play the level, and they understand the spatial relationships throughout. So this is our setting, the abandoned mill town. This is the most basic level of development right here that I've established in the 2D design. What I typically do for my blockouts is I use a grayscale value to determine some kind of indication of different heights within the level design. So what we see here is the player enters on the left-hand side, right there. That's where the player start is. They start along a riverbank at kind of a low elevation. We can tell it's a low elevation because it uses a darker grayscale value. And the player eventually reaches higher elevations. You can see like the highest traversable elevation here is the later gray value at the building way up on the upper right-hand side of the image. So that's something I typically do. There's a lot of environment like non-playable space outside the gray zones, but I like to establish, first of all, the actual area the player can traverse. Over here where the green star is, that's the player's ultimate goal. In this case, this would be the final objective. It would be where the player exacts revenge for hire. Maybe there's a twist in the story. But in this case, the bandit leader, who's our ultimate objective to defeat, could be located across the bridge there. The bridge is the white area there that crosses the blue area, which is a river that runs the old abandoned mill. So right now we start establishing what the different major buildings are, what are the landmarks within the town. The mill kind of serves as the hub of the town. It's a large, easily recognizable building with a water wheel. We can see the water wheel there. no longer turning, or maybe it is turning, but it's still in the water, but the mill's no longer operational. But that becomes kind of the crux of the whole mission, is to get through the mill and find a way through that. If we continue on here, we can see that running from the mill, from an opening at the side of the mill, there's a bridge that runs across the dam that leads to the ultimate objective. At the highest elevation of the map, we see a town hall building on top of the hill built by the original mill owners. The town hall could have been used by the workers to gather and discuss issues of living in the town in their off hours. Here we have the worker houses. These are the kind of a replicated building throughout the town. Typically in these old kind of company towns, the mill would have built a lot of housing. The owners of the mill would have built housing for all the workers in town, typically in small, kind of modest dwellings, cabins, or very small houses with very kind of similar layouts. In other words, all these houses kind of look the same. They're the same size, the same floor plan. So what that means for us is we're going to try to build these houses here out of maybe just one proxy asset, and then later they can be decorated a little bit to look slightly different. But it helps from a production standpoint. It also helps from a realistic storytelling point of view as well. And the stair path completes the player's path down from the high elevation of the town hall, back down to the middle of the town where there's a certain floor height there. And there we want to try to maybe make some areas where it's maybe hazards. Maybe the player has to jump over collapsed parts of the stairs using their game mechanics to have a little bit of a challenge as they go around the level in that way. Here we've established some doors. We determine which of these buildings are enterable, which are not enterable. In this particular iteration, maybe I don't know all the buildings that should be enterable. This kind of happens during iteration. At this point, I do know I want the player to be able to enter through green doors. So in other words, the mill has a front door and a back door. The red door that crosses the bridge indicates a locked door. We also see that the town hall has two doors, meaning we can go in the front door and go out the back door. And maybe down the road, maybe as we iterate on this, we determine that for some exploration, we want the player to be able to enter some of the worker houses. That could be kind of a fun gameplay beat on its own, but we could kind of iterate on that as we build out the level and play through it. As something we could kind of arrive at later. It's not crucial to the gameplay beats. So we start thinking of our gameplay beats now. Our first gameplay beat goes from the player's start, right up toward the front facade of the mill building. The player finds they can't go anywhere else. They see that the roads around the mill building and out of town are blocked, maybe by gates, maybe by fallen trees, that kind of thing. It is an abandoned town after all. That could be conceivable. But the first gameplay beat is just kind of introducing things, allowing the player to see across the river to the ultimate objective, allowing them a nice reveal as they round the corner of the river bend. Nice reveal of the mill building from there. The second beat involves exploring the mill building and finding the locked door that crosses the dam bridge. The third beat would be leaving the back of the mill building and trying to get to the road that leads up to the top of the hill, because at this point, the objective could be to find the key that opens up the dam bridge. So to that end, they could be looking for a key. Their objective could be looking for a key. So as the player reaches beat 3, they see the town hall building on the hill. It's a prominent spot in an elevated position, and it's presented as a reachable destination. Although beat 3 ends up being perhaps a combat beat where the player has to fight through waves of enemies, stopping them from reaching the town hall at the top of the hill. Okay, so here we have the fourth beat. This could be after you defeat the enemies that are blocking the road up the hill. And here we could have possibly an exploration beat where the player, maybe they search through the abandoned worker houses. Maybe they find some more enemies in the houses. It becomes kind of a risk-reward scenario where the player can decide if they want to take some time and explore the houses, maybe risking their lives to find extra loot or ammunition or anything like that, any other kind of player resources. Once that's completed, they head up to the front door of the town hall, and maybe the town hall is a hideout for the lieutenant or the bandit leader, and they fight their way through there. After defeating the bandits in the town hall, they discover, after looking through their belongings, a key to the locked door, blocking progress across the dam bridge. This is basically going to be set up in such a way so that the player is forced to take a new route down to the mill building. This could be because the town hall building is damaged. The player can only enter from the front, but perhaps they can't get back out that way, so they have to navigate to the back of the town hall and go out the back door. So from here, they go down the hill, they do some navigation challenges, navigating the dangerous stair path back down to the mill building. And once they're there, they unlock the door to the dam bridge, and they cross the dam bridge, and they reach the dwelling of the bandit leader. Now, some of these things could be iterated on a little bit once the gameplay starts being built out in the Blockout itself, but for now, this is a pretty good foundation for a plan where we could add more to it or subtract from it if we wanted to. But it's a pretty good circular flow and exploration flow through a level that has a fairly believable structure within an old town that could have existed a long time ago. So far, we've clearly identified the layout and events of the playable portion of the map, but it's a good idea to indicate the setting around the playable space that is viewable in the vista. So in the surrounding vista, I've indicated things again using a height map technique to show the high elevation areas surrounding the playable space. I have the lighter areas surrounding the playable areas to show that this whole town is like kind of nestled in a valley here, bordered by mountains, bordered by high hills, things like that. So it's sort of tucked away in this mountain pass here. So this is kind of my indications here of how the rest of the level would be built out. And this becomes useful later on to tell like a broader environmental story of the surrounding landscape, and also helps the art team later when they have to build those areas in the vistas. With our 2D plan in solid shape here, we have a good basis to begin blocking out in the editor.